All right, let's jump right in. Today we're going to unpack a really specific way of looking at debt, one that kind of merges ancient theology with our modern economy. We're going to explore an argument that sees financial debt as something much bigger than just a money problem. It sees it as a deep spiritual issue. And believe it or not, it all kicks off with one single, powerful line from thousands of years ago.
And this is it. This is the line. According to the source material for this explainer, this verse from the book of Proverbs is the absolute bedrock for understanding what debt really is. It's not presented as just some friendly financial advice. No, it's framed as a stark warning about a state of being.
So, an ancient warning. What does that actually mean for us today? Well, the source material we're looking at is crystal clear on this. This is not a metaphor for just feeling trapped by your bills. It argues that this is a literal description of what happens when you take on debt. It's a form of modern-day bondage.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how this idea of slavery gets defined. It's all about losing your personal freedom, your sovereignty. Think about it like this. Let's say you feel a deep spiritual calling to quit your 9-to-5 and go start a ministry, or maybe some nonprofit work. But you've got a hefty car loan or a big credit card balance. Suddenly, that calling has to take a back seat, doesn't it? Your obligation to the lender now comes before your freedom to follow your convictions. Your choices aren't entirely your own anymore.
So let's bring this ancient idea right into the 21st century. How does this principle of bondage really play out with the financial tools we use every single day? What happens when you just swipe a credit card?
And this right here just perfectly illustrates the trade-off that's at the heart of this whole argument. It's like a fork in the road. On one side, you have spiritual freedom, the autonomy to live your life based on your deepest beliefs. On the other side, the obligation of debt. And that might mean you have to keep working a job you can't stand, not just to live, but to generate interest for a lender. One is freedom, the other is, well, a state of service to a creditor. Okay, so if debt creates this massive spiritual problem, what's the mechanism that makes it so common, so widespread? Well, the source points its finger at a very specific feature of our banking system. We're shifting gears now from the what, the spiritual cost, to the how, the very engine that allegedly powers this entire system.
The concept is called fractional reserve banking. Now, it sounds a little complicated, but the core idea is pretty straightforward. When you deposit money in a bank, they don't just keep it all sitting in a vault. They're only legally required to hold onto a small piece of it, a fraction, as a reserve. The rest of it, they're totally free to lend it out. Now hang on to that thought, because it's absolutely crucial for understanding where this argument goes next.
Let's just walk through this, because it's really key. Imagine you deposit $1,000. The bank holds a fraction, let's say 10%, so that's $100. Then it lends out the other $900. Okay, so the person who borrowed that $900 goes and spends it, and it gets deposited into another bank. What happens then? Well, that second bank keeps its fraction, $90, and lends out the rest, $810. You see the cycle? And here's the wild part. From this perspective, the very act of lending creates new money in the system, money that literally did not exist before that loan was made.
So now we've got to connect the dots. We have this huge, abstract banking mechanism on one side, and that very personal, very ancient quote we started with on the other. How in the world does money out of thin air connect to the idea of a modern debtor's prison?
And here it is. This is the synthesis of the whole argument. The claim is this: because the money is created by the loan itself, the bank is lending something it doesn't physically have. It's just numbers on a computer screen. But in exchange for this digitally created credit, you, the borrower, promise your future. You're obligated to pay it all back with interest, which you can only earn through your real-world time, your energy, and your labor. This, according to the source, is the core mechanic of modern bondage. You're trading your tangible, finite future for money that was created on a ledger.
And that brings us to the final, central question that this whole framework poses. After looking at the ancient warning and the mechanics of modern finance through this very specific lens, the source leaves us all to consider this. Is our entire system of credit and lending actually a sophisticated, dressed-up form of bondage? It's a question we're thinking about.